Before we get into today's edition of Just the Truth, let me tell you about the latest special from Mike Lindell at MyPillow. The standard MyPillow, normally $49.98 for a limited time only, just $14.88 with promo code Joey. Go to MyPillow.com, click on the radio listener specials, and see all the specials. There's a limited quantity of just 10 at this special price. That's $14.88 with promo code Joey. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studio. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. President Donald Trump says that the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel should be canceled if hostages aren't released by Saturday at noon, with an ultimatum of let all hell break out if it doesn't happen. Elon Musk says FEMA has sent $59 million recently to luxury New York City hotels for illegal migrants, but New York City officials says there's more to the story. We have all the details for you. A North Carolina Army base that was renamed under the Biden-Harris administration has again been renamed to its original name. Fort Liberty is once again Fort Bragg, but with a twist. Also, Drew McKissick, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, joins us today to discuss the latest CBS News poll and a bill in South Carolina that will allow registration by party. There's a lot to talk about. Let's get started.
I told you we'd be back.
And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall make you free.
It's Joey Hudson.
I wanted to name it the Joey Hudson bill, but you know they don't allow you to put names on bills. But I wanted to call it the Joey Hudson bill because I know that one's been near and dear to you for a number of years.
That's how it's done. Let your voice be heard.
And the truth shall set you free.
Here's Joey Hudson.
President Donald Trump has issued a stark warning to Hamas, declaring that if all hostages held in Gaza are not released by noon on Saturday, he'll call for the ceasefire to be canceled and let all hell break out, he said. The president made the remarks from the Oval Office yesterday, last night actually, early evening, after signing a series of executive orders. President Trump emphasized that the decision ultimately rests with Israel, but he made it very clear where he stands and where the U.S. stands. He said if all the Gaza hostages aren't returned by Saturday at 12 p.m., I would say cancel the ceasefire. Let all hell break out. Israel can override it, he said. And he stressed that Hamas must release all hostages immediately and not in drips and drabs, he said. The comments come, of course, as Hamas announced that it is delaying its next planned hostage release, accusing Israel of violating the ceasefire agreement. A Hamas spokesperson claimed that Israel had failed to fulfill obligations, including allowing displaced persons to return to northern Gaza and providing agreed-upon release supplies. The group now says that it will postpone the next scheduled exchange, which was to take place on Saturday, with no indication of when that may take place. Israel's defense minister, Israel Katz, fired back, calling Hamas their move a blatant violation of the agreement. He has since ordered the Israeli Defense Forces to maintain the highest level of readiness for any potential escalation. He said, we will not allow a return to the reality of October the 7th. Under the current 6-week ceasefire deal, Hamas had agreed to release 33 hostages in exchange for the release of nearly 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. Think about that. 33 hostages, 33 innocent people in exchange for 2,000 Palestinian prisoners. And they want to renege on that? 5 swaps have taken place so far, with 21 hostages freed in return for more than 730 Palestinian prisoners. The next scheduled exchange was supposed to see 3 more Israeli hostages released in exchange for hundreds more of Palestinian detainees. Meanwhile, Trump commented on the condition of recently released Israeli hostages, talking about how they look like Holocaust survivors, saying it appeared that they hadn't had a meal in a month. He expressed concern over their treatment and warned that patience is running thin. And look, with tensions escalating, all eyes are going to be on Saturday's deadline to see whether Hamas will comply with Trump's demands or risk the potential collapse of the ceasefire altogether. We'll see. Things are still very shaky over there. President Trump is doubling down. Speaking of this, meanwhile, he offered his proposal when Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu was in Washington, a week or so ago. And during the press conference, President Trump kind of surprised everyone. I don't think it was a planned statement when he talked about the U.S. taking a long-term ownership position in the Gaza Strip. You remember that? So in an exclusive interview with Fox News' Brett Baier prior to the Super Bowl this past weekend, President Trump outlined his vision for a post-war Gaza, stating that there are great people in the Middle East, he said, who could fund its reconstruction once Israel's conflict with Hamas comes to an end. Here's the exchange between President Trump and Brett Baier.
There are a lot of hot spots around the world. I want to hit a few quickly. Okay. With Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, you said this.
The U.S. will take over the Gaza Strip, and we will do a job with it, too. We'll own it.
That caught a lot of people by surprise.
Yeah,
obviously.
some positive,
but even some of your supporters wondered whether that meant U.S. troops were going to have to be going into a dangerous Middle East conflict.
No troops.
So where is it today?
I've been watching 50 years, 60 years. They go in, they occupy, they get slaughtered, everything's terrible, everyone leaves, they go back. This has been going on for forever, right? Forever. Now it's essentially a demolition site. There's practically no building that's livable in the whole thing, on the whole Gaza Strip. I say we go in, we knock them all down, we just create some, no more Hamas, there's no Hamas there, there's nobody there. We move them into beautiful areas of the Middle East. I'd like to go to Egypt. They have a lot of land. I'd like to go to Jordan. I'd like to go to others. And we'll build beautiful communities for the 1.9 million people. We'll build beautiful communities, safe communities. Could be 5, 6, could be 2. But we'll build safe communities a little bit away from where they are, where all of this danger is. In the meantime, I would own this. Think of it as a real estate development for the future. It would be a beautiful piece of land.
Would the Palestinians have the right to return?
No, they wouldn't, because they're going to have much better housing, much better. In other words, I'm talking about building a permanent place for them. Because if they have to return now, it will be years before you could ever. It's not habitable. It will be years before it could happen. I'm talking about starting to build, and I think I could make a deal with Jordan. I think I could make a deal with Egypt. You know, we give them billions and billions of dollars a year.
So when you hear the pushback from the Middle East, what do you think?
I don't hear that much pushback. A lot of people thought it was a great idea. Really, a lot of people. And I'm not talking about big money for I just think it will be stabilized if the United States owns the Gaza Strip. If people aren't living in the Gaza Strip, and Hamas isn't there because nobody's there, people aren't there, nobody's going to be there, and later on it can be developed, you'll give some to Saudi Arabia.
So you're not saying U.S. troops?
No, you don't need no, Israel will watch it, because it's right next to Israel.
And what's the time frame? Do you have a time frame?
I would say let it start almost immediately. I would like to get some land from these others. We'll get Saudi Arabia. We'll get some of the great people. We have incredible people in the Middle East. We'll get these people to finance it. It's not a lot of money. You're talking about building 1.8 million houses. That's not a lot of people, you know, relative to other problems in the world.
And he's right. It's not. I mean, to build 1.8 million homes, that would not be just a monumental task. Now, again, I get back to who's going to pay for this. I mean, we have to continue our support for Israel. I get that. But if we were to go down this path, and if other people, regional leaders, agreed to that, everybody has to pay their fair share. I'm not up for the U.S. footing the bill for building 1.8 million or whatever that number ends up being. There's got to be other people in that Middle East area who has skin in the game. You agree? A key component of Trump's plan is the relocation of Palestinians. And that means building them homes someplace else outside of Gaza. He mentioned Egypt, Jordan. This idea has faced a lot of resistance from regional leaders. Well, I mean, almost immediately when Trump floated the idea, Jordan's King Abdullah has consistently rejected the notion of Palestinian displacement. And he's expected to discuss the issue directly with Trump during a meeting at the White House today. Meanwhile, Egypt has announced an emergency Arab summit in Cairo later this month to address the, quote, new and dangerous developments surrounding the Palestinian situation. So I don't know that it's going to be quite as easy as President Trump thinks it will be to get support in that region to build these houses in another country for the Palestinians. When asked about the Palestinian right of return to Gaza, you heard Trump say that that's really not an option, that they should not be allowed to return to Gaza. And he's right with that. I don't know how you let the Palestinians come back to Gaza and not see the same thing take place again, not see Hamas just rebuild. And in a decade from now, we're going down this same path. Trump also emphasized that he believes a deal with Egypt and Jordan is possible, citing the billions of dollars of aid that we pay. Now, that is our bargaining chip. They may get on board if they think that those billions of dollars will go away, which maybe they should. I never have completely understood why we feel like we have to fund the entire world. It's like buying friendship. Would they be our friends? Would they be our allies if we didn't send them billions of dollars? Are we willing to take that risk? Maybe try it? You tell me. Text me. Email me. Joey@joeyhudson.com. There's a lot of talk about making America great again, and it begins with making America healthy again. Dr. Ashley Lucas and her team at PhD Weight Loss are at the forefront to educate and guide you to be your best self. The millions being spent in propping up Big Pharma are astounding, only to create long-term dependency and harmful side effects. Let's take a natural approach that isn't connected to a pharmaceutical company's bottom line. The coaches at PhD Weight Loss will show you how. The entire program is centered around science and nutrition, a proven roadmap that has helped over 8,000 clients lose over 331,000 pounds. You'll learn what to eat and when, how to quiet cravings, and finally get rid of that belly fat. Plus, you'll never take a medication. How many pounds would you like to lose in 2025? Do it the natural way with PhD Weight Loss, here to lead the charge to make America healthy again. Call PhD Weight Loss and schedule your consultation. 864-644-1900. That's 864-644-1900, or go to myphdweightloss.com. The Philadelphia Eagles are celebrating their massive Super Bowl victory. Boy, was that just a teardown, a blowout over the Kansas City Chiefs. But one big question remains. Will the team visit the White House? President Donald Trump has yet to extend a formal invitation. And veteran offensive lineman Lane Johnson of the Eagles says that the decision will ultimately be up to the entire team. Johnson is the team captain. He spent all 12 years of his NFL career with the Eagles. He said that he'd be honored to attend regardless of who the president is, but emphasized that it would be a collective choice. Now, the discussion comes after you think about the history, and I really had forgotten about this. In 2018, Trump, you may recall, rescinded his invitation to the Eagles following their Super Bowl win. At the time, some players declined the visit due to Trump's criticism of those who had knelt or raised a fist during the national anthem. Remember this now? I had totally forgotten it. Eagles owner Jeffrey Lurie remained focused on the victory, saying that before the game he was asked about a potential White House visit when he said, "I just want to win the game." Meanwhile, standout defensive lineman Josh Sweat, who had 2.5 sacks in Sunday's championship game, expressed more excitement for this week's championship parade in Philadelphia than a potential White House visit. For now, the city of Philadelphia is gearing up for the celebration, with the parade set to roll through the city later this week, and we'll see what happens. Too bad that politics and sports don't always go together. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has ordered the U.S. Army to restore the name of Fort Bragg, but with a twist. In a memo signed aboard a U.S. Air Force C-17 before landing in Stuttgart, Germany, Hegseth directed the North Carolina base to be renamed to Fort Bragg.
There it is. Pursuant to the authority of the Secretary of Defense, Title 10, United States Code, Section 113, I direct the Army to change the name of Fort Liberty, North Carolina, to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. That's right, Bragg is back.
Now, as I mentioned, there is a twist to this, because this time it is named for Fort Roland L. Bragg, honoring a World War II hero rather than its original Confederate namesake. The base is home to the Army's famed 82nd Airborne Division and U.S. Special Operations Command. It was originally named in 1918 after Confederate General Braxton Bragg. In 2023, as you'll recall, as part of the Pentagon initiative following the 2020 George Floyd protest under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, it was renamed to Fort Liberty, which I thought was just crazy. Now the installation will bear the name of Private First Class Roland L. Bragg, a decorated soldier who earned the Silver Star and Purple Heart for heroism during the Battle of the Bulge. According to the Defense Department memo, Bragg displayed extraordinary bravery by commandeering an enemy ambulance and driving 20 miles to rescue a fellow wounded soldier. Hegseth emphasized that the change recognizes the personal courage and selfless service of all those who have trained to fight and win our nation's wars. This decision follows other recent renaming efforts within the military. Fort Benning, home to the Army's infantry school, was renamed Fort Moore in honor of Vietnam War Commander Lieutenant General Hal Moore, while Fort Hood was renamed Fort Cavazos after four-star General Richard Edward Cavazos. With this latest directive, of course, one of America's largest military institutions is again Fort Bragg, now honoring a different Bragg and a new legacy of courage. Wonder who was given the task of finding a person with the last name of Bragg that would be suitable to rename this for. I mean, how does the left argue with this? Now they're gonna come back and say, yeah, this is just a roundabout. But hey, it's not. It's Fort Bragg, which we're all accustomed to. I mean, who's ever heard of Fort Liberty? But they'll still find it offensive somehow. I thought it was a brilliant idea. Also, speaking of Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, he instituted a ban on allowing transgender people to join the military late last week following the directive from President Donald Trump and a series of executive orders. A memo that actually was dated February the 7th and signed by the Defense Secretary says, effective immediately, all new accessions for individuals with a history of gender dysphoria are paused. All scheduled, unscheduled, or planned medical procedures associated with affirming or facilitating a gender transition for service members are paused. The memo also says service members with gender dysphoria have volunteered to serve our country and will be treated with dignity and respect. Now, here's what's unclear, and the memo does not address this, and this is the elephant in the room. What will happen to those currently in the military and identifying as a gender different than their assigned gender at birth? Do they just continue serving? So for example, if there is a man, a guy who was born as a male, biological male, who has under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris decided he's actually a female, and he is now wearing a dress rather than fatigues, what happens? Can he continue parading around in his female uniform? And I don't know if he's been in the females' barracks, does he get to stay there? During a military town hall on Friday, Secretary Hegseth tore into diversity, equity, and inclusion, saying, I think the single dumbest phrase in military history is, quote, our diversity is our strength. He said, I think our strength is our unity. Hegseth went on to say, our strength is our shared purpose, regardless of our background, regardless of how we grew up, regardless of our gender, regardless of our race. In this department, we will treat everyone equally. We will treat everyone with respect, and we will judge you as an individual by your merit and by your commitment to the team and the mission. Late last month, the Pentagon declared identity months, including Black History Month, Women's History Month, as dead within the DOD. Can't celebrate Black History Month anymore. Can't celebrate Women's History Month. said that they're not going to use resources of the Department of Defense to celebrate these. And good for them. It's time to get rid of this. By the way, I had a great conversation with my buddy JR from Westminster about Black History Month. If you're not familiar with JR is a longtime listener. He's a black man, black conservative who lives in Westminster. And I just had a candid conversation with him. It aired this past Saturday on Word on the Street. If you missed it, go back and listen to it. Find it on my YouTube channel. I'll have it posted there. Just look for Joey Hudson on YouTube. But basically, JR said we shouldn't have a Black History Month. We should have an American History Month. I asked JR, I said, what do you prefer? To be called black or African American? He said, look, I'm an American. I want you to call me an American. You don't have to put any type of prefix before that. I'm an American. And that's how we all should feel, right? An executive order signed by President Trump last month also required Texas to update medical standards to ensure that they prioritize readiness and lethality and to take action to end the use of invented and identification-based pronouns within the Department of Defense. Basically, what President Trump has charged Mr. Hegseth with is just have our troops ready. Have our men and women, our biological men, biological women, have them ready to defend our country, to defend our freedoms. If they have to go into combat, have them ready. And that's all we can ask for, right? That's all we expect. If someone volunteers to serve in our armed forces, just be ready to do the job. That's what I loved about Pete Hegseth when he was talking about how he wanted his troops to be. And he talked about that you'll be a respected individual and you'll be judged on your merit. On your merit. That's it. The executive order specifically expresses or states that if you express a gender identity different from an individual's sex at birth, this does not meet military standards. Basically, if you were born a male and you now claim to be a female, you're not going to meet military standards. Now, it kind of answers my earlier question about what do you do with men and women who are currently in the armed services. And I still don't know for sure how that's going to be handled because it has not been specified. The order also restricts sleeping, changing, and bathing facilities by biological sex. It's not an immediate ban, but a direction for the Secretary to implement such policies. It revokes former President Joe Biden's executive order that the White House argues allow for special circumstances to accommodate gender identity in the military, to of course, the detriment of military readiness and unit cohesion. Look, I've never served in the military, but I can't imagine a group of men having a female with them who thinks she's a male. It makes, and I can't imagine a group of females likewise having a male among them who thinks he's a female. It just does not have that warm and fuzzy feeling, does not allow me to sleep well at night knowing that our country is safe. Your comments are welcome on the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. That's 864-477-5639. Emails always welcome, joey@joeyhudson.com. Speaking of the Firmin Ford text line, it's never been more important to support locally run businesses owned by people who actually live here in the upstate. Let me take a minute to talk with you about our friends at Firmin Ford. If you're looking for a new vehicle, maybe a great pre-owned vehicle, one you can trust, or maybe you're looking to order that special vehicle. Either way, if you want a new one, a brand new one, or a pre-owned that you can trust, the folks at Firmin Ford, they're there to help you. Their name is on the sign because their name is on the line, because every single transaction is important to them. Jim Firmin, Matthew Firmin. They do business the right way. When you stop by, when you give them a call, or maybe when you just send them a quick email, you're always going to have access to a member of the Firmin Ford family. And by the way, they also offer great service, and you're not going to have to wait weeks and weeks to get it done. And you do not have had to purchase your vehicle at Firmin Ford. Doesn't even have to be a Ford. They service all makes and models. Visit my friends at Firmin Ford online at FirminFord.com, FirminFord.com. Elon Musk is back in the headlines again. This time he's threatening to claw back $59 million that he says the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, sent last week to luxury hotels in New York City to house illegal immigrants. A claim that New York City Hall officials say is not true. So here's where we are. The world's richest man, who is now digging through our federal government spending habits, posted in an early morning X post that the funds were, quote, just discovered by his Department of Government Efficiency, his DOGE committee, even as President Trump called for a complete overhaul of FEMA that could even be seen as an effort to close the agency down, that they're sending this money to house illegals. Trump just last month signed an executive order to create a council to review FEMA as he expressed concerns over serious concerns of political bias in the agency. You remember the reports where back after Helene, there were reports that FEMA agents were passing by houses who had Trump signs in their front yard. Musk's threat could put Mayor Eric Adams in a rather awkward position, as Mr. Adams is desperately pleading for funding and help from the federal government, from Donald Trump, in their years-long migrant crisis that they say has cost the city $7 billion. And they'd love to have Trump earmark some federal dollars to help. Musk wrote on X, sending this money violated the law and is in gross insubordination to the president's executive order. That money is meant for American disaster relief and instead is being spent on high-end hotels for illegals. He said a clawback demand will be made today to recoup those funds. Now, clawback is when you have a federal agency who has released funding to a program, but something changes for that program and they ask for it back. They basically say, send us our money back. It's not unusual. New York City Hall officials told the New York Post that no one has reached out to them yet demanding the money be returned. They also issued a statement refuting Musk's assertions that carefully avoided naming the billionaire or explicitly saying that he was lying or wrong. They do not want Elon Musk on their bad side. This hands-off approach to Musk coincided with Mayor Adams convening a meeting of his top commissioners to tell them to avoid criticizing Trump in order to avoid putting billions in federal funds on the city at risk. Look, there's a new sheriff in town, and I think Mayor Adams knows it. I don't think he wants to irritate Donald Trump or Elon Musk. City officials say that only $19 million of the $59 million that Musk highlighted in his tweet will go towards housing migrants in luxury hotels, they said. The City Hall in a statement says, we have already spent over $7 billion on this crisis alone, and the previous administration committed only $237 million in funding to help house the migrants in our care and for future services. It said, we have continued to receive previously allocated reimbursements through the past week. We will discuss this matter directly with federal officials. Now, look, I hate it that the people of New York City are having to foot the bill for this $8 billion they claim they spent. But whose decision was it to spend it? Who asked them to spend it? Mayor Adams is the one who just so openly encouraged the illegals to come to New York City. Right? I mean, he asked for them to come. He's protected them. He's the one who literally took over hotels to house them in. So I'm sorry that it cost them $8 billion, but they made that choice. They could have just as easily said, look, don't come to our city. We don't, there's no room at the end. But no, they opened their arms. They welcomed them. So, hey, look, if you're stuck with a bill, you're stuck with a bill. You did it to yourself. The New York Post wrote, the city has never paid luxury hotel rates for housing migrants and pointed out that the money is not a disaster relief grant. They wrote, the vast majority of the roughly 200 makeshift shelters that have housed asylum seekers during the crisis weren't luxury hotels, with the eye-grabbing exceptions being the swanky Row Hotel and Watson Hotel. They said the years-long migrant crisis has so far cost Gotham $7 billion. Mayor Eric Adams has said, often lamenting the relative pittance offered by the federal government for what he argues is a national failure. Again, hey, Mayor, you made that decision. Nobody forced you to do it. The city expects roughly $237 million will be eventually sent by the feds because it was promised by Joe Biden. Look, Donald Trump may cancel that. He may let New York just foot the bill. The officials modified the city budget in November to account for $118 million in new FEMA funding through the Shelter and Services Program, a federal program that reimburses certain migrant housing costs in 35 communities in states affected by the border crisis. Now, again, why is FEMA money being used in any program that has anything to do with illegals? Period. If FEMA has that money, it needs to be coming to Western North Carolina. It needs to be going to states that have been hit by real natural disasters. The fact that cities have opened their arms to illegals is not a disaster. According to the Post, Congress set aside $650 million for the overall program, and New York City applied for funds in 2024. Customs and Border Patrol works with FEMA to disperse the money allocated by Congress. New York City ultimately was granted $59 million last year, which corresponds with the FEMA payment that Musk claimed is illegal. The grants won't go all towards hotel, they said. Instead, the majority will be spent on reimbursing other services the city shouldered as it cared for hundreds of thousands of migrants requiring food, health care, and other needs as they flowed into the city. They say that roughly $26 million of that FEMA grant will go towards food, security, and other services. Another $13 million going towards congregate shelters. Again, all this based on what city officials are saying. Those reimbursed expenses are from the city's costs from dealing with the migrant crisis between November 2023 and this past October. Again, that was during Joe Biden's and Kamala Harris's administration. Can Trump come back and cancel that? Should he? If in fact, what New York is saying is true, that this was a grant that they applied for and was approved for under Joe Biden, but they just haven't been paid yet. Should it be an option for Donald Trump to just say, "Hey, sorry, we're going to let you. We're going to have to let you pay for that because we're going to cancel FEMA's program here. We're going to make sure FEMA only spends the millions and millions that have been allocated to real natural disasters." The scrutiny of FEMA, of course, follows President Trump's high-profile criticism of the agency. He just doesn't like the job that FEMA is doing. President Trump called on the council to have its first meeting within 90 days, saying that he expects a report of the findings on his desk within 180 days of the council's first meeting. So basically, the clock is ticking for FEMA and their future. And if they've really been spending their money on illegals, they don't deserve to continue. Right? You agree? On our guest line, Chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party, Drew McKissick. Welcome and good morning.
Good morning to you, sir. How are you?
I am wonderful. We have the Super Bowl behind us, which actually wasn't that super, as it turned out. I mean, boy, did Philadelphia just run away with that or what?
Oh, totally. I'll have to admit, I was one of the people who was kind of hoping maybe to see Taylor Swift cry, but that's mean of me to say. I know, but I was kind of pulling for the Eagles. I'll admit it, even though their mayor can't spell the name of the team, but it's okay. I was pulling for them, and it was a good night.
Yeah, it was fun, and the president got a great response, and so yeah.
He did.
All right, well let's start today with the latest CBS News poll released yesterday, and it pained Margaret Brennan to announce that 53% of Americans approve of the job of President Donald Trump. Now, it got a little bit worse too as she was talking with the CBS Elections and Surveys executive director, a guy by the name of Anthony Salvanto. When asked about the results, his explanation was just real simple. He said, Margaret, I'm going to keep it simple. He's doing what he said he would do. And it is that simple, isn't it?
It is that simple. It really is. I mean, when we look over the course of the last year and a half, at pretty much every poll, regardless of what network or news organization did the poll, in just about every single one, the top three issues, and it might have been in different orders and so forth, but would have been illegal immigration, the economy, and crime. And again, depending on the news of the day, maybe they were in a different order. But talking about those issues and in a way that was relevant to people, that they understood and that he took those issues seriously and he had a plan to deal with those issues is what got him the White House, in my opinion. And now what will help continue to grow the party and put us in a good stead for midterm elections is going to be continuing to work on those issues. And people see that you're taking them seriously. You've got a plan of action. People see him being a man of action since, within an hour after taking the oath of office, with multitudes of executive orders, not to mention, obviously shrinking the size of government seriously. We've seen what the DOJ department has been doing with Elon Musk. I mean, and the things that they have been uncovering have been phenomenal. I read a great article earlier last week about the first hours, like 2 a.m. the morning after Trump took the oath of office, where those folks were already heading into the Treasury Department, plugging in their algorithms to basically map where the money comes from and where the money goes throughout the government, and seeing all of the different nexuses of money, uncovering layers and layers of, I guess you could just go ahead and say corruption underneath, miles of bureaucrat red tape, and now basically having a map of where they want to go further in terms of reforming the government and exposing all the crazy things that our tax dollars have been spent on in the process. And it's been phenomenal. And that, I think, as he points out, is why his numbers are going up. People are seeing him doing what he said he was going to do.
Yep, exactly. And some of the numbers are just amazing. And the way people are describing him, for example, 69% describe Trump as tough, 63% energetic, 60% believe he is focused. Now,
Yep.
Would you ever think about how people would describe Joe Biden? I mean, focus is not a word that comes to their mind when you talk about Joe Biden. But there was one thing that was a little troubling. And with me today, Drew McKissick, chairman of the South Carolina Republican Party. People are concerned, of course, about prices. And 63% of the people said that their eggs still seem to be going up, that they're getting higher. So what's the messaging here? Because we all know that this is going to take a little time. It's not like he can just sign an executive order and the price of eggs are going to go down.
Right. Exactly. Well, look, it comes back to the economy, but at the root of it all is energy. I mean, it takes energy to move eggs from point A to point B. It takes energy to move the fertilizer from the plant to the farm where the chickens are that they eat. And then, once the chickens lay eggs, you move the eggs to the wholesaler and then on to the supermarket and then to, your front door. As the price of energy comes down, the price of eggs will come down, the price of everything related to production of eggs will come down, et cetera. I mean, energy is the tax throughout the economy. And he is 100% focused, as we've seen, on making America an energy superpower, not to mention just energy independent. And we've seen the actions that he's taken already in terms of federal land, cutting regulations there in terms of, what can be produced and where. I mean, it goes back to energy. Just about everything that we buy, trucks we see rolling down the highway, the ships, the trains we see moving, all of it moves on energy. And as that price comes down, the price of everything essentially will come down.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's shift gears a bit here, Mr. Chairman. Drew McKissick with me today. Voter registration, from a partisan standpoint, one of the questions I get asked quite frequently, and especially from people who move into South Carolina, is why can I not register as a Republican or as a Democrat? How do we keep the Democrats from voting in our primaries? Well, it appears we may be getting closer than ever to getting that accomplished with the bill that's before the legislature. Talk with us about where we stand with that.
Sure. Well, just in terms of thumbnail of the past, why our laws are the way they are today is because we essentially, as a party, grew up under the election regime, if you will, that was set up by Democrats, say, 70 years ago. In the days when everybody in South Carolina was a Democrat, then it really didn't make much sense to register by party. Everybody's in the same party, and the primary essentially became tantamount to the general election. And then move forward, 20 and 30 years as the Republican Party began to develop, and we grew bigger and larger. And now we're at a point where 62% of all elected local officers around the state are Republicans, much less 2/3 of both chambers in the legislature, all statewide constitutionals, et cetera. It is our right, or the right of any group of people or party, to be able to get together with one another to decide who we want to put on the ballot to represent us. And now, when we do that through primaries, essentially we open the door to every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the state, Democrats included. Now, if we want to stop that, we need to be able to register by party. When we get registered to vote, we should be able to pick a party or remain unaffiliated if we want to. And then, as we go forward to have primary nominations, each party would have the right to keep the other party's adherents out of their primary. We have a bill in the legislature to do that right now. So in the House, it's House Bill 3643. House Bill 3643. As of Friday, I've got 50 co-sponsors on that bill so far. 50, which is incredible at this point. I don't know if we have any bill in the legislature that has that many co-sponsors on it right now. And we also had a Senate bill, an identical Senate bill introduced last week by Senator Wes Clymer from up in York. I've got, I think, 6 co-sponsors on that right now, and we'll be moving forward with that one this week. So right now it's a race to see which one we can get a hearing first on in either chamber. And move those forward. But if you get an opportunity, call your state senator or call your House member, ask them if they're not a sponsor of those bills, would they co-sponsor and help push it forward, because that's what it comes down to, is our right to choose our own candidates.
Yep, and it's very important. So to talk with your state rep or with your state senator, ask them to support this voter registration bill so that we can register as a Republican or a Democrat, whatever your preference is, or as Drew said, neither. Drew McKissick, always a pleasure. Appreciate your time today, and we'll catch up again next week.
Yes, sir. Have a great one. Thank you.
That's it for today's edition of Just the Truth. Thanks for joining me in the PhD Weight Loss Studios. To lose weight for the last time, visit myphdweightloss.com. If you haven't joined my mailing list yet, visit my website, joeyhudson.com. Click on the Connect with Joey button so that you can receive our emails and the most up-to-date news. Also, join me on my YouTube channel. Be sure and like, comment, and subscribe. Just search for Joey Hudson. As always, thanks for spending a few minutes of your day with me. Do me a favor and forward this episode to a few friends. Just click on the share button and send to your contacts. We need to build an army of conservatives to win our country back, and we can do that by continuing to share the truth with our friends and family. Keep those comments coming via the Firmin Ford text line, 864-477-JOEY. Email to joey@joeyhudson.com, and I love your messages on the MyPillow message line. Again, that's 864-477-JOEY, 864-477-5639. Be sure and take advantage of the MyPillow special, just $14.88 on the standard MyPillows when you use promo code Joey. Order online at mypillow.com or call 800-893-4053. We're back again tomorrow and hope you'll plan to join us. Until then, remember, God's got this. He's still in control.